On September 12th, I had the distinct privilege of being a keynote speaker at one of the many Tea Party rallies that took place around the country. When I returned home later that evening, I was shocked to learn that many networks reported that the protesters that attended these rallies were racist simply because they disagreed with President Obama's policies. Over the years, I've heard many definitions of racism, but this was the first time that it's ever been expanded to persons who simply disagreed with a president that happened to be black. However, if you would check out those who have disagreed with the president during the past 8 months, you will find that this definition does not hold water. For instance, early this year, when the Congressional Black Caucus and the historical black colleges protested because Obama cut their funding by $73 million, no one called the Congressional Black Caucus racist. When the black farmers protested in Washington, D.C., because the Obama administration refused to pay 75,000 black farmers the money that was due to them from a lawsuit that they won, no one called the black farmers racist. In May, when the black broadcasters protested because their request for bailout money was never granted by the Obama administration, no one called the black broadcasters or accused them of being racist. But when the Tea Parties protested against Obama's spending practices and policies, former Democratic President Jimmy Carter went on national television networks and called these individuals racist.
This morning in Atlanta, former President Carter spoke up and spoke out against what he has seen emerging in some of the public protests against President Obama.
I think an overwhelming portion of the intensely demonstrated animosity toward President Barack Obama is based on the fact that he is a black man, that he's African American. I live in the South, and I've seen the South come a long way, and I've seen the rest of the country that shared the South's attitude toward minority groups at that time, particularly African Americans. That racism inclination still exists, and I think it's bubbled up to the surface because of a belief among many white people, not just in the South but around the country, that African Americans are not qualified to lead this great country. It's an abominable circumstance and grieves me and concerns me very deeply.
Who calls all criticism racist and halt all intelligent discussion, then you are the problem. I wrote the first anti-slavery essay in America in 1775. I founded the first abolitionist society in the country and wrote the first rough draft of the Declaration of Independence, specifically calling for an end to slavery. I know the ugly face of racism, and modern America is not a nation of racists. Opportunity and anti-discrimination laws have leveled the playing field. Take advantage of both and stop thinking of yourself as a victim. And understand, all conflicts are simply memories of the past. If you can't get over them, you condemn yourself to be destroyed by them. It's time to put away the race cards and unite behind the common bond. It's the strength without which there is no America.
Now, no one is saying that racists do not attend these rallies, but what they are saying is that these individuals are not invited, nor are they accepted, nor are they welcomed. When Dr. King first started his demonstrations, both communists and black militants infiltrated his rallies. They weren't invited, they weren't welcomed, and oftentimes they were hard to identify. Their covert participation made it very difficult for Dr. King to prove that he was not a member of the Communist Party. It's interesting to note that of all the networks reporting on these Tea Parties, very few of them have ever hired a black to be their network anchor. And in all of their coverage, what they fail to report is that without the powerful backing and support of the Democratic Party, slavery and Jim Crow would have died in the wombs of those that conceived it. Let's set the record straight. It wasn't America that was racist. It was the powerful party of the Democrat Party, Jimmy Carter's party. History tells us that it was the Democrat Party that supported and kept the institution of slavery alive. Because of slavery and Jim Crow, millions of blacks died. 12 million died in the Middle Passage on their way to America. History also tells us that in 1857, it was the Democrats, the party of Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama, that supported the Dred Scott decision, a decision that classified blacks as property, but not as people. The chronicles of history also reveal that the Supreme Court justices that ruled in the Dred Scott cases were all pro-slavery judges appointed by Democratic administrations. Democrats supported the fugitive slave laws, black codes, and other repressive legislation that was designed to deny African Americans their rights. And while supporting these types of laws, the Democrats opposed the 13th Amendment to give blacks freedom, the 14th Amendment to grant blacks citizenship, and the 15th Amendment to grant blacks the right to vote. They opposed the 1866 Civil Rights Act, the 1867 Reconstruction Act, the 1874 Act, the 1871 Ku Klux Klan Act, and the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It was the Democrats that supported Plessy versus Ferguson, while opposing Brown versus the Board of Education. History tells us of the thousands of lynchings that took place in America. Over 98% of them took places in cities, towns, and states that were under the control of Democratic governors, mayors, sheriffs, and U.S. senators. In these towns and cities, black communities were burned to the ground. Communities in towns like Rosewood, Florida, Wilmington, North Carolina, and the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Under Democrat administration, blacks were beaten, burned, bombed, lynched, decapitated, and mutilated. Their mistreatment far exceeded the interrogations that took place in Guantanamo Bay. And after all that this party has done to African Americans, Jimmy Carter has the audacity to call the Tea Party protesters racist. Earlier this year, a letter was sent to President Barack Obama asking him to issue an apology to African Americans on behalf of the Democratic Party for all the things that they have done to African Americans during the past 200 years, but he refused to issue that apology. A copy of that letter and other historical facts that we have related here today can be found in my newest book, the latest book, The Drama of Obama Regarding Racism. After reading the book, Chairman Jealous of the NAACP stated that the book was insightful and thought-provoking. Citizens of this great country must know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They must know that racism is not a product of America. It is a product of the Democratic Party, the party of Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama.
That's just how white folks will do you. It wasn't merely the cruelty involved. It was a particular brand of arrogance, an obtuseness in otherwise sane people that brought forth our bitter laughter. It was as if whites didn't know they were being cruel in the first place, or at least thought you deserving of their scorn. White folks. Ray assured me that we would never talk about whites, as whites, in front of whites, without knowing exactly what we were doing, without knowing that there might be a price to pay.
What's the first three words of the Constitution? We the people! Joins us now live from Orlando, Florida, to talk about his experience.
Don, look, we have to stop this racist nonsense.
I want to talk to you about that.
It's so offensive that the American people are not racist. I went to 16 states on the Tea Party Express tour, 34 rallies. I was showered with affection at every single rally. And the thing that really surprised me most, I opened every rally with, "Hello, my fellow patriots. I am not an African American. I am Lloyd Marcus American." And people went nuts. I think he's a socialist too. Does that make me a racist? How come criticism of this president make a person a racist?
I think you're making a very good point that everyone who disagrees with the president is not necessarily a racist.
Thank
and
you.
you said, but you do believe that he's a socialist.
And when you call these decent people racist, that's wrong, and it tears the nation apart.